Hi, Gabby. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
Yes. Yeah. So, for those of you who may not know you, how would you introduce yourself beyond the accolades and the titles? Who is Gabby Bennett at her core?
Yeah, I am a social worker. I'm a volleyball coach. I'm a daughter, a sister, and a person who's just hoping to spread resources and information to kind of help people on whatever path they're looking to go on.
Tell me a little bit about your earliest memory of volleyball, because you've been very involved in that, and how that first connection shaped your identity both on and off the court.
Yeah, so I started volleyball a little bit later than most people in my neighborhood. A lot of them had started really young, but I was in like seventh, eighth grade. I was a competitive gymnast, so I've been doing gymnastics most of my life
Mm.
while my peers were doing the normal sports and being like normal kids. But once I was too tall for gymnastics and like with injuries and things like that, it was time for me to move on to volleyball and basketball, like most of the kids in the neighborhood did. And so my earliest memories were walking into a gym, seeing the girls wearing it's like they know the cool spandex to wear, they know the equipment to have. I just remember feeling really out of place and having that feeling for quite a few years while playing.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Yeah.
yeah, and I've noticed that's something that actually sticks with quite a few players I work with too. There's so much going on. Everyone knows what to say and what to do, and I have no idea what's happening. And I know I can play a sport. I was a gymnast, but this is just a totally different world, you know? It's like I can hop from apparatus to apparatus and like do a flip in between, but this volleyball gym
Yeah.
is so overwhelming. I remember that being like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm gonna
Yeah.
like navigate this process.
I guess a whole new culture, huh?
Completely, a whole new
Yeah.
culture, and it's tough walking in when you see other people really know what they're doing, and also, like, they've been doing it together for some time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what about you grew up on the south side of Chicago, but you also attended St. Ignatius? It kind of put you in two different worlds. How did those environments shape your worldview as an athlete and as a leader?
Yeah, I think that, at Ignatius, hard work is definitely a really big thing that's pushed there. It's academically really rigorous, and the program at the time was ran by Coach Eastman. He's still there now, but he's an
Mm.
assistant. I guess he can't leave, but, you know, he ran a great program, and he really wanted us to develop as young women and also volleyball players. So we had team retreats. I thought that it was really important that we were able to bond as a team and figure out who we were as individuals and young women, in addition to being a program that, you know, pushed mental resilience. So every day before practice, every day before camp, every day before the tryout, you ran the mile. And so
Wow.
it wasn't necessarily a physical test, it was a mental one. He knew that everyone was physically capable of doing the mile. It was more so who's mentally capable of pushing through this and then doing plyos and then doing the practice. And ultimately,
Wow.
that helped shape my understanding as like an athlete and a coach. I think that, you know, at the end of the day, when you're in the fifth set, it's not about which team is better and has the bigger players. It's who has the endurance and stamina physically and mentally to keep really sound fundamentals in that final stretch. And I've
Yeah.
seen it to be really true. So I think that I took a lot of inspiration from that. Maybe at the time I was like, please, I don't want to do this mile. But,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
as an adult, I'm
So
like that.
painful.
Yeah, there's a lot that I actually pulled from that that I can really be grateful about.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because they're the sports that are a game. And it's in some ways easier to get locked in. And then there are those sports like swimming or running where you just have to tolerate the pain. It's
Yeah.
really unpleasant. And that's a big mental block for people to get through.
Yeah, for sure.
When did you first realize that your journey in sports would extend beyond being a player, that you would really use it as a platform for change?
That was purely accident. um,
Yeah.
purely accident. But I think that what's meant for us doesn't miss us, and this is what I was supposed to be doing all along. I
Mm.
as a player, I graduated college in 2020, And when you're a player in the sport, you have all sorts of opinions of this is what should have happened and this is what I think went really well and here are things that I wish that I had at that stage of the game when you stumble
Mm,
upon more resources. And so when I graduated in 2020, my senior year was during the pandemic. Um, so we left campus and everything. I got to finish my senior season, but due to an injury I had another year of athletic eligibility, but I wasn't going to use it because we assumed everything was going to be shut down.
mm,
And
right.
when I came back home and in 2020/2021 school year, my club reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to coach and help them out with their younger kids. And
Mhm,
I was like, sure, why not? It was something to do outside of my regular job that I had when I was working at Goldman at the time. And then I just really enjoyed it. I saw a lot of girls because I had the lowest team for the age group. I saw a lot of girls who were looking for guidance and kind of felt as if they were like slipping through the cracks or just starting in their journey. And I'm like, there's so much untapped potential here. And I think that a lot of times programs, this is not just like one particular place, but in general, because someone doesn't come fully finished or
mm,
super tall and unfinished, they're not seeing the potential that's in that player. And
mm,
so I really liked helping them grow into confident players and grow into confident people and learn a little bit more about each other as teammates and just a lot of life lessons, particularly on building trust with people and things like that. So it kind of happened by accident. And then I was like, I really enjoy this. And then it eventually came a point where it's like, I don't like the job that I'm doing in the daytime. I really like this work that I'm doing here in the outside hours.
mhm.
I just felt really
Yeah.
pulled to it.
Well, it's incredible because what a gift you're giving somebody when you're seeing them that way, that you see that they have potential. I mean, there are countless stories where somebody's life was changed by one person who believed in them, who invested a little bit extra in them. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that because I studied psychology in college and I was just interested in like biases and things like that, I knew that there were some people who were slipping through the cracks due to certain biases, which some we can control and some we just cannot. Like we're unable to see them,
Yeah.
those blind spots. But I
Yeah.
thought that there were a lot of players just across the board, not even just on my team, but in general, to where I'm like, I wonder what biases got in the way of them getting to that next level. I wonder what biases got in the way of them being just like this girl over here. It's like they're not that
Right.
different. Like, what was the
Yeah.
difference? Why did someone say yes to this person and no to that person? I just like those
Plays a
types
huge
of,
role. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, on that same theme of biases and being seen, every athlete remembers the first time that they first felt truly seen. For you, was it a coach's comment, a game-winning play, a quiet moment outside of sport, somebody that said something to you?
Yeah, I think I have quite a few moments where I was like, I feel seen as a player. I think that every player goes through the ebbs and flows of feeling seen and unseen, especially when it is a new sport to them and they start a bit later than people. I remember in grade school being able to make like that top team that all the girls who like their parents like knew volleyball so well or were like
Mm,
top coaches and they were just known as the volleyball people. And the high school they went to, like they win state, they're like one of the number one high schools in the nation. And so being able to make a team with those people after having just started the sport, there was a lot of feeling like, why did this happen? Like I deserve it, but like what I'm it was just a lot of
mm,
confusion. But having some good plays and a parent coming up to me being like, you did really well. It's like you didn't have to say that.
mhm,
There was no reason for you to say that besides just out of the kindness of your heart and you were being honest. And so that was a moment to where I really felt validated. It was like, I'll keep going. Or a couple years in, I was like, wow, I was really able to make an impact on this game. I had quite a lot of blocks. And then in college, I was like, wow, I'm really connecting and my coach is seeing it and my teammates are seeing it, or like there's just results on the board that are showing. Those are moments where I felt really seen and validated. But I
Yeah.
think that the biggest ones were internal, where I was able to, like, determine it myself. I was like, "Wow, I can't believe I did that." I remember
Mm.
thinking, like, that was impossible or that's just what good people do. And it's like, I'm one of those people now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a remarkable feeling.
So, what about as a Black woman navigating predominantly white academic and athletic spaces? What unspoken expectations, biases, stereotypes have you felt pressing against you?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So I'll start with just how Black women are allowed to celebrate. You can see this at the highest level, and then you can see this in the college level, the high college level, so with Texas and things like that. And then even just like in my own experiences, a Black woman celebrating, like people say it's scary. There have been times where they're like, hey, you can't cheer that way. They find it threatening to
Mm,
where other players can. So you just,
mm,
those are different things. Or when as a player, you're supposed to give your setter feedback. And it's like, hey, is it okay if I have this set higher, this, and that? And then certain players are able to give feedback in one way, but if you do it, it's like they're scared of you. They're thinking that you're scary. It's like, why are they afraid of me? If I'm
mhm.
their biggest fear, they have bigger problems in life.
Yeah.
So um, there's just a lot of things like that where you have to be careful about how you carry yourself, or you're asked to be careful about how you carry yourself because you're just seen as a threatening being altogether. Or you're too cocky, or as a Black player, they're expecting you to jump high and hit hard and be more of the
Mm,
aggressive type players and not as technically sound. And if you're not technically sound, like that's okay. We'll just have her block and hit and be a mindless banger instead of like
mhm,
someone who's running the offense or someone who's really running the back court and things like that. I found that I mean, it's a bit of a difference now, but before I don't know if I was seeing a lot of Black setters or a lot of Black liberos really running the backcourt given those opportunities. They wanted them to jump and pound the ball and stuff the ball. And then
We see,
there would be
see this in a lot of sports, right?
yeah, and there'd
Yeah.
be an
Mhm,
excuse like, "Oh, well, they're not as technically sound, so we'll have this player be the 6th rotation, or we'll have this player be more strategic. They don't have the technique." It's like, well, what flex opportunities did you give them to increase their technique that way?
mm,
Did you break
mhm,
things down? Or there's other things to where, in a lot of Black families, they're like, I guess don't act a fool up in there. Like, keep yourself composed and calm. And then they're assuming that you don't care. So either you're
mhm,
too emotional and you're scary, or you're not emotional enough and you don't care and you're not connecting with the team. But they're not understanding that the team is making no effort to truly connect with you on your
yeah.
level.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
may be
it's a big
saying
one.
all this, but it's true.
Oh, I mean, you can read about it again and again, or you can watch documentaries on it over and over again. And I just not too long ago read "Revenge of the Tipping Point" by Malcolm Gladwell, and he's talking about the numbers at which either women or minorities need to be represented in order for them to be seen, not just people who are there on the team, but also like part of the team. So, and not just athletically, I mean, even in C suite situations or communities or whatever. So, it's something that you see across environments for sure.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's talked about a lot in our community, but they're like, you'll never see an average Black player on the bench. It's like if you're
Yeah.
Black on the team, you're good. You may not
Yeah.
even play, they may play someone else over you, but you are good. You're not bad,
Yeah.
not average.
Yeah. 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 How have you balanced the dual pressure of being excellent while also be seen as a representative for your community? Because there's a
How
lot of pressure in that regard too, right? Like you have to constantly represent, which doesn't, that same pressure isn't quite there in the majority communities or white communities.
yeah, and so the question is, how do I manage this?
Yeah, yeah, the pressure of it, the dual pressure.
Yeah, I think that growing up in a family that's made this information clear to me, it wasn't a surprise when I went into these spaces. It
Mm,
wasn't comfortable, it wasn't enjoyable, but it wasn't a shock. I think that I was somewhat prepared for how to navigate the experience so that when I did go to PWI for college or high school, it wasn't shocking or alarming to my system. I had found a way to navigate as a Black person, as an individual, with those pressures around me. I know
Mm.
that those are things that I have to abide by, and sometimes I can come home and complain about it, and sometimes, like, that's just the reality of my life. That's something that's not inside my realm of control. I focus on the
Mm.
things that I can control, and I try to surround myself with people who are supportive and understanding. That's kind of
That sense of control is huge, right? I mean, it's important to exactly that weigh what is within your control and what isn't to cope with it a little bit, huh?
Yeah, and then focusing on educating. So basically, how I manage it is by doing the work that I do right now, trying to create small pockets of change and micro interactions like we're having right now, which will have a huge macro ripple effect by however many people end up seeing this and having these conversations. Or even if people are talking about like social media posts, sharing that. People might think it's just, oh, I'm just sharing this on my story, but you have no idea how many lives that's going to touch, and that helps me kind of process through the reality of it, helping more people understand the reality because growing up, it wasn't as if I could say these things without sounding like the angry Black girl who's complaining and a little bit delusional and sounding like
Mm-hmm.
a victim. But now there's so many people talking about it. It's in kind of like every sports landscape you could think about because every person has pushed forth those micro interactions. So I think that helps me deal with it a lot more. I focus on what I can control and I try to help the people who are playing right now.
Yeah. How often do you get to have these micro interactions?
Honestly, anytime I'm coaching with an athlete or anytime I'm doing evaluations or working with other coaches, sometimes you'll hear certain comments here or there like, this player is
Mhm.
this, that player is that. And I'm like, oh, they kinda seem the same to me. What do you think is the difference?
Uh-huh,
Just
uh-huh.
pulling apart the bias when maybe they don't even notice that it's there. Or it's like, "Oh,
Ye
tell me what you really like about that player. Tell me what you really don't like about that player." Because some coaches like, "I just don't like the way that they play." And it's like, "Tell me more about what that play
yeah,
style actually is, and let's get into it so we can understand where the bias is coming from." Because
yeah,
sometimes it is playing. It's like, yeah, the player just doesn't have it, they're not going to make that team. But there are other times in which it's like, this is a borderline player, and they're in contention with a player who's pretty similar, but there's some sort of bias that's pulling them. And I will do the hard thing and ask why, or I'm curious to know more. I think those micro interactions happen quite a bit back when I was coaching teams. Now that I'm focused mainly on my organization, it's with other athletes, or if I have peers or even my sister talking with me about her team and her coaching and stuff like that. We'll have those kinds of conversations, or my partner, or anyone who will listen about this industry. So I guess you too.
that's right, yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? These biases, they're incredible. And I just remember I used to work for an all-girls school, and they were talking about how when you have a co-ed classroom, boys get called on more often in math and science classes, and girls get called on more often in the language arts and art classes. And these teachers don't realize that there's a bias that they're communicating. They're completely unaware of it. And the
Yeah,
same happens with hiring managers. They probably haven't been trained how to hire. And if you really just look at the resumes, provided the data is true on the resumes, then it tells you a lot about an individual, but they will go by, oh, I like this person. This person reminds me of me. And so you
yeah,
end up getting a very uniform team quite often, right?
yeah,
And ultimately, we know diversity, however you cut it, diversity of perspective, experience, all those things, it makes for a stronger team,
for sure.
inevitably, much more well rounded.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt pressure to downplay certain aspects of your identity or to amplify them in order to be accepted or taken seriously?
That's a really good question. I've definitely felt certain things about my hair, for example. I think that's a common thing with Black women in white spaces about your hair should be presentable in a certain way. So it's put away, it's not natural. If it's natural, it is looking a certain way that's quote unquote presentable. Especially back when I was in school, it wasn't really like a huge natural hair movement. So there were a
Mm,
lot of Eurocentric standards that were pushed on people. That
yeah.
was definitely something that was just kind of always out there. Like you understood as a black player, like your hair needs to be kind of put up and put away. Whereas I know other players are like, yeah, I didn't shower today or like the last 3 days. I was like, that's very
Yes.
fine for them, you know? And so
Not so fine for the other players on
yeah,
the team.
like, you have to really be careful about, like, how you're presenting.
Mhm.
But in terms of personality, I've kind of always shown up how I show up, and whether people have found it enjoyable or abrasive, I've left that to be their problem.
Mm.
So,
Well, that takes strength. We're so self-conscious, we wanna fit in. It's not easy.
it definitely wasn't, and, it's something that I have talked a lot with my partner about actually. Just the difference between, oh, well, I'm this way as an adult because I've been doing this for so
Mm,
long that making other people, I mean, wondering if other people are uncomfortable about how I'm showing up is no longer my problem. Or even if I
mm,
am worrying about it, I still am myself anyway. I'm going to be who I am regardless of that outcome because
mm.
I don't want to live without integrity as much as I can. It's too uncomfortable. It's like you have to choose between your discomfort,
Yeah,
either be
yeah.
uncomfortable appeasing them and hiding yourself, or be uncomfortable showing your full self as much as you can, as much as you feel comfortable. And there may be social consequences, but I've decided not to really focus on those and try and find a way navigating those consequences.
I think that's so important because even just like having to hide yourself, there's that low grade stress that ultimately kills you slowly, but it kills you, right? It's just unbearable. What about in your coaching? Do you intentionally model authenticity, especially for young Black girls finding their place in sport?
Yes, 100%. I model authenticity and I model honesty and
Mm.
transparency and try to make the life lessons as clear as possible. I think that everyone's always telling kids, this models life. They don't tell them exactly how. And
Oh, uh-huh.
so I'll try to use core examples and try to like put the pieces together so they actually can understand. These are things I can apply now. I don't have to wait until I'm an adult, like everyone says. It's going to help me when I'm an adult. You can do these things now. So, for example, on the court, like this is how you build trust. You communicate, you tell people what you're going to do, and then you do it over and over and over and over again. And then
Mm,
they trust you. It's like it's the same thing in your regular life. People kind of
yeah,
start out with a neutral level of trust. I'm not sure, you may or may not do it, but you tell me you're gonna do it and then you show up, and you tell me you're gonna do it and you show up and you do that over and over again, I trust you. And it's the
yeah.
same thing in the court as in life. So I try to help them with those life lessons, and I'm also honest with all my players, especially when they're having like emotional moments when they're talking about, I'm so bad at volleyball, like nothing's ever okay. And I'm like, you have to decatastrophize this. Realize that you're here in the middle of the suburbs on a random Sunday because you like volleyball. You have
Yeah,
to remember why you're here. Whereas other
right.
coaches like, you need this to be the most important thing to you, or like go
Yeah,
sit down over there. And I'm like, let's keep in mind that like we're all here because it's fun.
yeah.
Or if
It's
it's not
supposed to be,
fun,
right? Yeah.
yeah. And if it's not fun, let's have a conversation after this match and talk about how we can make that happen.
It's such a big deal, especially I find in this country. I don't know what your experience has been. So much emphasis is put on results, right? And that results are the definition of success. Now, you in particular have reached some remarkable milestones player, coach, the Obama Foundation scholar. Uh, when did your focus shift from chasing success to really kind of seeking fulfillment?
I am an Obama scholar, and
Yeah,
when will that be enough? You know, what
yeah.
is going to be enough? Granted, I reached a bit more clarity before that process, but I think there are some people who get to a point of the ultimate levels of success, and it's still like, well, what now? What else can I chase? I think there's a difference between growth and like wanting to continue to do things and grow. I'm not
Yeah.
saying stay stagnant, but having targeted growth. So understanding why you're choosing to grow. Are you looking to grow to like fill some sort of unmet need? Like internally you're a little bit empty, or are you looking to grow because I really like this process. I really like this outcome. I really like this field. And once I sat down and did some values work and just looked into what was important to me, what did I want my life to look like? If I were to span through my whole life and at the end of it be like, that was a life worth living. That was really
Mm-hmm.
meaningful. And I sat down and did some acceptance commitment therapy, the value sort cards, and just looked at all of
Yeah.
them and I was like, this is important to me. I really don't care about that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
called to this, but why? And I'm feeling like a really strong, I should care. And I was just really thinking about where's that should coming from? Is it from me? Is it external? Where is that external source? Why am I so strongly tied to it? I just really investigated, where those things were coming from and why, and went through some really tough times personally and just kind of had to like rebuild. And I'm still in the rebuilding process now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's incredible because I think there isn't that space created for us often enough, or maybe it's not talked about enough, whatever it might be. There's this idea that there's one correct direction in life. And, we know it's very choppy and there are ups and downs and peaks and valleys. And um, we can kind of get lost in that if we don't enjoy the journey along the way. But part of that enjoyment is the reflection
Yeah.
of if I die tomorrow, have I enjoyed this? Have I got meaning out of it? Have I been a good usher to my fellow human next to me? Will they say their life was like incrementally better because I was there and part of it? So that whole space of reflection and mindfully moving forward is so important.
Yeah, I just focused on what my values were and trying to make my actions as aligned to them as possible. Granted,
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah.
things that stray and some things you have to do that aren't in alignment with your values,
Oh
but
yeah. Mhm.
ultimately, 2 or 3 steps down that action, it's aligned to your value.
Yeah. How do you personally define fulfillment today?
Uh, I'm gonna go with moving in alignment with your values. If
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
are able to wake up each morning and not feel an overwhelming sense of dread, if you're waking up with a sense of positive neutrality or excitement, I
Mm.
think that's fulfillment. I'm not saying every day has to be the most exciting adventure in the world. That would be an
Right.
amazing life. But I
And
think,
exhausting.
yes, exactly. I think that a sense of positive neutrality is a deep sense of a fulfilling life. I'm looking forward to what's going to happen today, or
Yeah.
today I have this on the menu. I'm not upset by it. I'm not bothered by it. Or if I am bothered by it, it's still a problem I'm willing to take on because it's in
Yeah.
alignment with
Mhm.
what's important to me.
What about athletes? Are they taught to measure success in ways that truly reflect their value? If not, how do we change that conversation?
No, I think athletes are completely divorced from their values. They
Mm.
are aligned to their coach's values, their parents' values. They are aligned to everyone's values but their own. So that is why I think it took me so long to really tap into what's important to me. And I don't think that's uncommon for a lot of athletes. I also think it's why they struggle with resilience. When
Mm.
you are resilient, you can bounce back because it's a part of the process. Mistakes are okay. But when
Yeah.
everything is reliant upon the result, and if you don't achieve that result, you're upsetting all these external factors that are putting all this pressure on you, you're going to feel like things are crumbling because you have no internal foundation to rely upon. You're not
Mhm.
tethered to anything inside. Everything's reliant on what other people are saying, what other people are expecting. So, of
Yeah.
course, it's going to be difficult to be resilient in the face of that because there's
Yeah.
nothing you're
Yeah.
grounded to besides their results and their expectations.
Yeah, and it can be crushing, right? It makes your world feel so small that there's just one thing you're being measured by.
Yeah.
Grind culture is really embedded in sports, and for Black women, that grind often carries an extra weight. How do you personally tell the difference between resilience then and self-neglect?
I think that's really difficult. I'm still working on
Mm,
that. But an analogy that's helped me, that you can't pour from someone else's cup if yours is
mm,
empty. I think that a lot of us rely upon, "Oh, if it's empty, then I can't." But I've gone into my cup has to be overflowing before I can start pouring into other people, because even if I have this much left in it, if I pour a little bit of that in
yeah,
there and still have some left, what level of thirst is this quenching? And then they're gonna come back for more and I have none left. So I've given them this. They're not even their thirst isn't fully quenched. Neither is
yeah,
mine. So
yeah,
none of us are winning in this situation. It's not benefiting anyone. So what I like to think is, am I fully abundant right now? And when I offer to do things, I'm trying to do it from a sense of generosity and abundance,
mm,
making sure that it's not, you know, I'm trying to think of the word conditional. I'm
yeah,
trying to do everything in terms of, I would give this to you freely without conditions. That's me giving it from a full cup. Granted, I would love
yeah,
to be compensated. And I think that there's fair compensation for things. I'm not saying people should do things freely, but when
mm.
there are opportunities and you can be compensated as such or not, I think making sure you're doing it from a place of abundance is important.
It comes back to being able to set limits and boundaries, and saying no can be so hard for people, right? And I mean, I'm sure you too, but I talk about that a lot in therapy
Yeah.
with my clients. Yeah, being able to set those limits and boundaries with people.
Yeah. Saying no is hard,
Mm,
especially one as a child in a household
yeah,
that doesn't teach it's respectful to say no. It's like you don't say no to
yeah,
adults. Who do you think you are? But
yeah,
and as an athlete, you don't say no to your coach. Who do you think you are? The respect
that's right.
culture divorces you from your values and a lot of your autonomy. So, I think
Yeah.
that
And
that's hard for athletes to grapple with.
oh, yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because there are the mandatory practices, but there are limits set on how many hours an athlete is required to practice. But then there are all the voluntary practices
Like, you have
where
to
you
be
don't
there.
have to go,
You
but
have to.
you have to go, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're burning the candle at both ends already, and then you're adding that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was
100%.
there ever a moment for you that pushed you through adversity only to realize that you were sacrificing your own well-being?
Hmm. Yes, I think in college, I really had a moment of reckoning with the sport to where I had an injury my sophomore year. I had a knee surgery, and even though it was my meniscus, it was a bucket handle meniscus tear, which is
Mm,
around the timeline of an ACL, or at least it
yeah.
was for me. And I really had to consider, was all the money and time and resources and dread I had in that period worth coming back and returning to the sport? Again, talking to those external factors that I felt really tied to, so parents, community coaches, things like that, and I was like, they're not giving like, for some reason, the answers they're giving me are not resonating, it's not enough, and so that's when I really had to dig in and figure out what's my reason for even doing this? Why am I here? I'm going to be a junior in college, and I've gone through the process, and suddenly I'm here, and I'm, quote, unquote, "living the dream of being a college athlete," but I'm feeling
Mm.
unfulfilled, I'm feeling something was just not connecting, and I really had to get in touch with my why for the sport.
The coming back post injury, there's obviously a lot going on. People are often scared. They've been kind of traumatized by their injury. Um, but also, there's a lot of pressure to come back. Is there a way that you think we can collectively redefine strength so it's not just about pushing through something, but it's also about really knowing when to pause, or like we were referencing before, knowing when to set boundaries, knowing when to focus on your values?
Yeah, that's tough, especially given an injury, but I think that the answer to this is holistic injury care. Um,
Mhm.
and this is something I'm still like working through injuries that I've had before. I think that with physical therapy, a main focus is strength and return to play. whereas they don't take into consideration mobility, pliability, how it's actually feeling. So some
Mm.
players will have, let's say, knee injuries and it's really their quad is super tight, but they're not focused
Yeah.
on relaxing that muscle and making sure that they're not over strengthening it. They're like, you need to return to play. This is happening because your muscle, you're so weak. And it's like, this player was squatting 275. They're not weak.
Right.
They
Yeah.
need a
Yeah.
holistic picture, and they need a mental health person talking with them about this is the first time you've had a huge portion of your identity severed from you completely out of nowhere with no planning. When you leave a
Right.
job, you give notice, but this is a
Yeah.
part of your life. It's a job and your identity, and it's just ripped from you one moment. And you might return to that identity as a completely different person.
Oh, yeah.
So I think
Mhm.
there needs to be holistic care when it comes to injury that will help people understand what's really going on, how to set those boundaries, and they can have a team that's kind of collectively working and on the athlete's side that sees the whole picture instead of pockets of it, which end up causing more issues and more insecurities in
Yeah.
the pool.
Is there then a way that you happen to guide your athletes on how to balance that discipline with self-compassion?
I try. Ultimately, it's challenging because, again, especially with younger players, you have
Yeah.
their parents to contend with. And there are
Yeah.
some parents who their strategy you're totally on board with. You're like, yes, they get it. They see the big picture. There are other parents who your big picture and their big picture are not aligned. And you see the player
Yeah.
coming in. Sometimes they're coming in super sick. And it's like, I don't want you coming in making other kids sick. But at the same time, their parent is like, I don't care. They need to show up no matter what. They have their own bigger picture. And so just talking with them when they're clearly seeming really down, sometimes they're like crying in sessions. I have one
Yeah.
player who is in tears every session.
Wow.
Yeah. And just because breaking through, like getting feedback for the first time is new for them, or
Mm.
hearing like new voices is new for them. Just there's a lot of things you have to contend with a player's mind when they're young. And so
Yeah.
I try to talk with them about what's important to you, just giving them little pushes of autonomy, I think is really helpful because there's not
Yeah.
many places that they have that in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I
Is
hope that answers
there
your question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting because, right, it goes into coaching methodology and how can you contribute to making this person a stronger person, because athletics may or may not be in their future, but dealing with adversity, getting feedback, failing, these are all things that they will, for the rest of their lives, will be part of the picture. And they have to grow into working with that, taking that feedback, learning from it. Um, it's so important.
Yeah, I some of my players, I tell them it's like when you first learn how to walk. You don't remember this, but you didn't come out of the womb just
Yeah.
walking. You
No.
were on your back and it was a milestone for you to roll and then
Yeah.
crawl and then stand
Yeah.
up and then walk. And now
It
you're
was a
running.
milestone to smile, remember?
Yeah. And so there's all these things they're very disappointed in. I can't run and jump
Yeah.
and throw a ball back in the
Yeah.
perfect direction of the perfect arc. And I'm like, do you remember a point when you first learned how to run? No, you don't
Yeah.
remember it because it's so far behind you. But there was a time when that was the biggest thing in the world.
Right. Right. And everybody cheered you on, and
Yeah.
nobody said, "You suck at this."
Yeah. It's like you're new
Right.
at this, you know,
You're new.
always
Yeah.
informing them this is new. And my college coach used to always say, is this called practice or is it called perfect? You know,
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's practice. And if
Right.
the game was based on perfection, it would be 1-0 and the game would be over. But we have
Right.
5 sets to 25 and
Yeah.
overtime, like, and it can go over that. So,
Well, and it certainly wouldn't be very interesting if your team won every single time.
yeah.
Then okay, why are we doing this? We already know the outcome. It's
Yeah.
exciting when it's in contention.
Yeah.
Is there a particular myth about coaching you'd love to see dismantled?
Yes, that coaches don't need education. I think
Oh,
that, yeah,
uh-huh.
I believe that it's helpful to educate coaches. Coaches should have just as much training as is provided with other people. think about how many kids have experience with youth athletics. I think it's like 70% of kids, even if it's in a gym class or an after school, maybe not even a club
Sure.
team or college, just almost every kid has had contact with a sport somehow, some way with the coach, whether a parent volunteer, and yet we don't provide them with any sort of resources or information. Like there's no consistent training across the board for coaches,
That is
which
so true.
and I think there's just like not a huge amount of respect for the industry in terms of
Mhm.
compensation, in terms of when someone's like, when I grow up, I want to be a coach. Think about like how people are responding to that kid. Oh no, you should try. Oh no, there's not a let's help you go to these things and these things to learn how to be the best coach there is. A lot of
Right,
people
yeah.
believe, oh, athletics didn't work out for you, so you stumble into coaching, and then you end up being good through trial and error or through experience. But I think that it should be demystified that there's not a lot of respect to be held in this field because people are having high expectations for other people that are caring for their kids and encountering their kids. So
Mhm,
why isn't there
mhm.
training and respect for this industry as well?
Well, and it has such potential for being an incredible influence over the child for good or bad.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important point, that education around how to deal with children, because nowadays anyway, you get all kinds of kids that are, like you said, crying, and if you don't know how to deal with a crying child or a tantruming child, if each child needs a little bit of a different style. Um, do you have the flexibility because you've got some learning under your belt that helps you approach those different children with a finesse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, for some kids, especially high school athletics, sometimes they're seeing their coach and their teammates and their teachers more than they're seeing their parents.
Oh,
These are
yeah.
people that are getting more contact with your kids than you might be getting. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah, yeah.
you should care about how they're being trained, like what their background, like all those things matter.
Has your definition of winning then evolved over the years?
I think that yeah, I definitely place less emphasis on winning and more on development. I think there's different kinds of
Mhm.
coaches. Some coaches want to win at all costs no matter what, and they think that's the lesson. I think that life lessons and development is way more important. And I want my players to understand the process, understand what kind of learner they are, because that's going to translate way more in life than, am I great at this thing? It's like, how did you get great at that thing? And when you weren't great at it, how did you learn? Do you need
Mhm.
visuals? Do you need to experience it? How do you best receive feedback? All those things are going to be really important for a player to learn. And so, those to me are the wins. When my player walks away from the team more self aware and they're able to do some of the work themselves off the court. And
Yeah.
then,
Mhm.
those are the players I usually see who move up a team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I know you're still a couple years away from retirement, but when you think about your legacy in coaching and scholarship, your community, is there anything in particular you hope endures the longest?
Yeah, I think overall player development and mental health, those are things that I want people to walk away with after having experienced me or any of my programs or anything that I've touched,
Mhm.
that players' voices matter and that they deserve some autonomy. There's a lot of times in which we just don't really respect the player's voice. Some people might think players have too much of a voice now these days. I think it's
Mm.
been a long time coming. They do a lot for us and for our community. They do a lot to entertain us. There's so much they put on the line, their bodies, their minds, their
Right.
time. There's so much
Yes.
that they sacrifice for us, and I think that it's important that we hear their very valid concerns. So that's something that
Yeah.
I hope that people, after having experienced me or any of my programs, walk away with, just giving players a bit more autonomy, hearing their voices, and respecting their mental health, and players just kind of building more resilience, but getting in tune with who they are.
And what about in terms of looking ahead a little bit? What's your current Everest?
Let's see. Well, I'm working at a private practice for mental health, so I'm looking to continue growing my caseload there. I really enjoy doing um, psychotherapy, depth psychotherapy, working with individuals on that. I'd love to work with student athletes or even collegiate athletes or former athletes on their mental health. I think that's something that's not tapped into as much. We talk about performance a lot, but not about how the sport has affected them emotionally. So I think that's something I'd really like to work on in
Hmm.
the future.
Nice.
Continue building cross court connections. I'm growing my parent workshops. So I'm looking
Mhm.
to help parents of student athletes just kind of navigate that process. And so it's an 8 series workshop where we'll have a specialist come in talking about eating disorders. Actually, I think that's something that really needs to be brought
Oh,
up for
yeah.
young volleyball players and athletes, just young women in general, and just giving parents a bit more information and some tools and flexibility on how to navigate this process. Because, like we said, there's not one right way. So I'm hoping that these parent workshops really take off and
Yeah, it's
uh,
incredible.
yeah, and parents focus on their self care. Parents focus on their self care too. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. They're often stretched thin. What about for those aspiring to follow in your footsteps? What's the most important step they can take to towards their own summit?
I would say values work, getting in touch with what's important to you and
Mm.
trying to release a lot of expectations that have been placed on you and understanding where they're coming from, why it's resonating, just getting in touch with what's important to you. I think once you know your values, you'll know yourself and you can really set up and align your life in a way to where you're climbing that summit one step at a time. It's more so execution mode because the path is already there. You know what you want, you
Mhm.
know what you need.
Yeah. Where can people follow your work, support your projects, your initiatives, the things you're most passionate about right now?
Yeah, so I have a website, crosscourtconnections.org. I see it's linked in the bottom banner there. That's where you can find me, just a little bit, my whole bio, information on player sessions. I do coach consults as well, team evaluations. So for the volleyball piece, as well as mental health and some free resources that I have for coaches, beginning players, and parents.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Gabby. It was
Thank you.
incredible talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that this went well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you.